Who is un-American? What is un-American? America has been asking that question since the 18th century, but it was during the McCarthy era that the term was used in a vitriolic and demagogic way. That weaponization unleashed acts of political revenge, facilitated by loopholes in the American legal and judicial system. However, a very unexpected group of people was targeted.
Did you file a passport application in July 2, 1954?
I filed about 25 in the last few months.
In July of 1954, were you requested to submit a non-communist affidavit?
Under no conditions would I think of signing such an affidavit. It is a contradiction of the rights of American citizens.
When you look at the careers of some classic-era Hollywood filmmakers, writers and actors, you might notice an unexplained void in their filmographies between the late 1940s and the early 1960s. Such gaps could be a sign of what this podcast explores, the plague of the Hollywood Blacklist. It grounded hundreds of people in American cinema, halting their careers, sometimes for many years, and in some cases, until their dying day.
Are you now a member of the Communist Party?
Oh, please.
Please answer, will you, Mr. Robeson?
What is the Communist Party? What do you mean by that?
Some of the cinematic gems of the 1940s and 1950s carry an inner trauma. Crossfire, directed by Edward Dmytryk in 1947. Force of Evil, written and directed by Abraham Polonsky in 1948. And Not Wanted, directed by Ida Lupino in 1949. What they share is this. In each case, a key creative force, behind or in front of the camera, sometimes more than one, was accused of being a communist. Regardless of who made them, some of these films were themselves deemed un-American. Their unflinching portrayal of prejudice, corruption, and social alienation was interpreted as an indictment of American society. Films were used as evidence against their creators. Even Chaplin faced ostracism for who he was and the films he created.
Are you now a member of the Communist
Party? Would you like
Party?
to come to the ballot box when I vote and take out the ballot and see?
People were barred from being hired by major studios and television networks if they were assumed to have ties to communism or communists. This included both explicit and hidden connections, most notably membership of the Communist Party of America. The ban also extended to anyone associated with charities, guilds, or groups deemed communist fronts.
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully suggest the witness be directed to answer the question.
You are directed to answer the question.
I invoke the Fifth Amendment and forget it.
These actions, amounting to a purge, affected people in many other sectors as well. Yet somehow, Hollywood figures, perhaps because of the massive reach of their medium, came to stand for the entire group of martyred leftists, progressives, and radicals who were blacklisted. The first 10 Hollywood figures called to testify refused and were subsequently charged with contempt of Congress, imprisoned, and blacklisted. They became known as the Hollywood 10. Most were involved in progressive politics, campaigning, and activism, particularly in forming independent unions and participating in labor and anti-fascist movements. Many were also members of the Communist Party. However, Hollywood progressives encompassed a broad spectrum, not just communists. Regressive elements feared that communists aimed to seize Hollywood for its profits and its massive global propaganda potential, and through it, to influence America itself. To achieve this, they believed communists needed to control labor and artists, the talented writers, directors, and actors who made the films through which public opinion was shaped. A bipartisan investigative committee of the United States House of Representatives took charge of ensuring that no Reds worked in Hollywood. The House Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC, organised a series of public, semi-public, and closed hearings investigating Hollywood from 1947 until the late 1950s, both in Washington and other cities. With the HUAC hearings televised, the situation spiralled into public hysteria. Under the pretext of the Cold War, civil liberties were curtailed or outright denied to some of the most politically engaged citizens. Then, Hollywood studios backed down and collaborated shamelessly to facilitate the purge. In fact, the blacklist was an invention of Hollywood itself. What or who is un-American? Lester Cole, one of the Hollywood 10, and a writer who had scripted dozens of successful Hollywood films since 1931, had a different answer to that. At least, different from HUAC's. In a small 1940 film directed by Joe May, The House of the Seven Gables, Cole situates un-Americanism within the scandal-tainted privileged class's murderous greed. These un-Americans would, 7 years later, be the ones crying wolf. Based on Nathaniel Hawthorne's 1851 Gothic novel, the story follows a brother who frames his sibling for murder in order to claim a house built generations ago on unlawfully seized land. When the innocent brother, played by Vincent Price, is released after 20 years, his fiancée, who has waited all that time, asks him to marry her. He reminds her that he is not free. His sentence has only been commuted, and until his innocence is fully proven, he has no civil rights. Cole's script predicted treachery, mock trials, and the denial of civil rights. It predicted McCarthyism. Cole himself would later spend a year in prison after refusing to answer HUAC's questions. Banned from work in Hollywood, he ended up working in a furniture factory. He belonged to a generation of well-educated, big-city intellectuals who discovered Marxism through theory and political idealism. His turning point came in 1925, when he became captivated by the dream of transference after reading Maxim Gorky. It was Gorky, not Marx, Engels, or Lenin, who made the decisive impact.
This feeling seemed to saturate my consciousness so completely that without any particular intellectual or scientific understanding of the connection between art and politics, they somehow merged within me.
The Great Depression was a wake-up call. It robbed Americans of their political naivety. Capitalism came under intense scrutiny after its epic failure during the most devastating economic recession of the 20th century. President Roosevelt's New Deal featured progressive projects like social security programs and major state regulations in favor of low-income citizens. The program opened many eyes to the potential benefits of a more socialist approach to distributing knowledge, wealth, and resources. These reforms also encouraged intellectuals to see the United States as fertile ground for Marxist-inspired social engineering.
Then came the federal government's work program. One by one, it took us out of the breadline. It gave us a new chance to take a normal place in the life of our community. It made us self-supporting. It changed the haggard, hopeless faces of the breadline into faces filled with hope and happiness, for now we work again.
At the same time, both in solidarity with FDR and in response to America's major social problems, a politically progressive cinema began to emerge, mapping the contours of an ongoing social revolution. Louis Milestone's proletarian musical, Hallelujah, I'm a Bum, conceived as a vehicle for singer and actor Al Jolson portraying a New York homeless man, was one example of early Hollywood left combining public appeal and social dissent. Remarkably, it wove elements of progressive politics and avant-garde cinema into the traditions of the early sound musical. It also featured the forgotten silent comedian Harry Langdon as a communist who calls the police, attacking demonstrators in Central Park, the Tsar's Cossacks. Hallelujah, I'm a Bum premiered in February 1933. By November, the United States had officially recognized the USSR. American filmmakers were already fascinated by Soviet cinema of the 1920s, which combined experimentation with ideological purpose, films that could both enlighten and excite. The rise of social problem films in the 1930s demonstrated that Hollywood could transform tangible social pain into stories of depth and resonance. In this climate, even apolitical writers felt pressured to be politically conscious, as the nation grappled with social disillusionment, staggering unemployment, and widespread hunger. If the Hays Code, the industry's moral guideline for self-censorship, regulated the length of a negligee, it thankfully neglected the politics of the person wearing it. The 1930s saw screens filled with two-fisted proletarian women who embodied the struggles and resilience of the era.
Remember my forgotten man? You put a rifle in his hand. You sent him far away. You shouted, "Hip hooray!" But look at him today.
More than a decade after its inception, the Communist Party of the United States saw a surge in membership, especially among people of stage and screen. Many joined the party because, as Alva Bessie told in an interview,
I was intellectually convinced that it was the right thing to do, and this was the only organization that was actually fighting fascism in the world, that was actually fighting unemployment, racial discrimination, and national chauvinism.
When the sound cinema came, these leftists, whose good ways with words were desperately needed, moved west, a migration that brought a cultural shake-up whose tremors would be fully felt only a decade later. In the West, the leftists reconvened. In the Los Angeles area, the screening of European films, especially Soviet films, was where they found each other, while the Spanish Civil War unified them further. The party organised educational courses and lectures for its members. Despite the dogmatism that deprived members of space for non-party-aligned interpretations, for instance, it was against psychoanalysis, the parallel development of pursuing radical politics while making good money turned idealism into a potent reality capable of positive change. The Hollywood left was sophisticated, engaged, and erudite. It encompassed a wide range, from the true believer to the curious, from the pragmatic to the dreamer, from the classic Marxist-Leninist ideologue to the anti-communist socialist. It is said that some had a fling with communism, some simply had a fling with someone who was a communist. During its reorganization in the 1940s, Communist Party officials realized that middle-class recruits were far more useful than the blue-collar workers. By becoming middle class, communism also became an intellectual fashion.
What's there to be shocked about? I just think it's funny, that's all.
There's nothing so funny about it. Not if you stop to realize that the party's been behind every decent cause in this country. The war against fascism and the labor movement. Look what it's doing today, fighting for the minorities, the Jews and the Negroes.
I can't get steamed up over causes anymore. Except for the Boy Scouts. I still believe in Santa Claus.
The Hollywood branch of Marxism lacked Marxist determination, partly because most of its members were terribly busy making money and happier paying the membership fee than attending courses. For some, it was just a healthy and non-toxic social clique where current affairs could be discussed openly. Hollywood left was moderate. Even the members of the Communist Party aimed for reforms in the US rather than an overthrow of the government. Instead of building a totally proletarian culture, their goal was more modest, building class consciousness. What fully contrasts the Hollywood notion of leftist cinema with the real Marxist-Leninist cinema produced in some countries is, for example, the absence of anti-religious films in Hollywood, many of which were produced in various Soviet republics. The priorities were different in America, and any critique had to be wrapped in satin. There are a great number of films written by the left that could have been written by just anyone. What makes the left interesting, however, is that small number of films that could be written only by them. They come with many labels: problem pictures, social message films, and depression dramas. Always striving for realism as the only aesthetic code by which important issues could be addressed, they managed to raise that realism in mass entertainment to new heights, making films feel more real, even within the boundaries of the most relative of aesthetic terms. Films of the left usually attack on several fronts at the same time. Some filmmakers, particularly writers and directors, consciously, deliberately, and sometimes militantly made films about the illusory promise of the American dream, which often served as a cover-up for inequity, exploitation, and discrimination. They argued that cinema, the country's most popular form of mass entertainment, should help America confront its dark side. Their work was sharp in challenging economic inequity, capital punishment, failures of the judicial system, and the commercial degradation of art. Praising internationalism, they displayed a wry disdain for the rich and a fierce critique of the bankers' power. In the 1930s, many leftist films were made that fit this description. Even a B-movie like The Accusing Finger of 1936 could pack many of these themes into 61 minutes. It's about a prosecutor, the majority of whose defendants end up on the hot seat until he himself is wrongly accused of murder and sentenced to death. Sent to prison while chained to a black man, the former prosecutor meets people on death row whom he had convicted. Directed in an admirably efficient manner by James B. Hogan, who was hardly a staple of social dissent, it makes it easier for us to attribute the film's perspective to the writers, one of whom is John Bright, dubbed by Paul Buell and Dave Wagner as the first important left-wing innovator in Hollywood. The film contains many surprises. For instance, a senator, played by Harry Carey, tells someone, "Perhaps someday we become more civilized." He also calls capital punishment mass murder abetted by new technological means and compares it to the genocide of the Indians. This is exactly the kind of film only the left could have made. One of the key leftist writers in Hollywood was John Howard Lawson. He was a pedagogue in charge of the Los Angeles Communist Film School, People's Education Center, in which he offered courses on literature, history, labor relations, foreign affairs, and writing for stage, screen, and radio. Not always an inspired writer, he was nevertheless very aware of themes such as race relations and could implement such themes in his films successfully. In a typical Lawson script from the 1930s, They Shall Have Music, he combines entertainment with political urgency. This 1939 film is set in a school in Brooklyn run by a cranky yet affable Jewish music instructor who offers free musical education to street children. Played by Walter Brennan, the teacher's struggle to save souls runs parallel to his efforts to save the building from wealthy bankers who own it and want to sell it. The film's internationalism is clear from its opening title dedication, dedicated not to the staff and students of the school in question, but to the many music schools throughout the world. Despite a simplistic story, the film's political doctrine takes the viewer into an explicit exploration of class awareness, collective integrity, social disobedience, and the rise against a numbing environment, accompanied by an attack on the enemies of the underclass, fascists and capitalists. One might argue that, in truth, there is very little difference between this and a film by Frank Capra, whom Blacklist historian Tom Anderson describes as a right-wing director. There are, however, ways of differentiating the approaches. In Capra's films, the attack is more pointed at individuals who are greedy or narrow-minded. The work of Hollywood Left, by contrast, makes that attack more systematic and presents it as a critique of the establishment itself.
From all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Parallel to these statements on celluloid, the left was leaving a lasting mark on the Union movement. Its most significant achievement was the formation of the Screenwriters Guild in March 1933. The Guild was born in a reaction to a 50% wage cut, lack of job security, limited artistic control, and an arbitrary system for allocating screen credits. Its creation was a historic challenge to studio bosses who were utterly dismayed. Many future members of the Communist Party were among the Guild's organisers, with John Howard Lawson serving as its first president. During the McCarthy era, the Screenwriters Guild was portrayed as a fully communist organisation, which was totally false. The Guild also supported other unions in Hollywood, including those formed by exploited menial workers and technicians. These lowest-paid workers fought against the sham unions created by the studios, unions often run by the mob, that were designed to corrupt or counter the legitimate ones. For the Hollywood left, these unions became the only point of direct contact with working-class America, bridging the gap between the princely lives of studio elites and the struggles of ordinary labourers. There is a film that stands as the great document of the Union Wars, Native Land, 1942. A piece of militant cinema, it was created through a collaboration of Hollywood talent and independent outsiders. Co-directed by filmmaker and activist Leo Hurwitz and the renowned photographer Paul Strand, the rousing docudrama was narrated, partly in song, by Paul Robeson, based on a text by Ben Maddow. 3 of its key creators, Hurwitz, Robeson and Maddow, would later be blacklisted. The film begins with 10 minutes of narration over archival footage before the first reenactment appears, a series of reconstructions showing Unionists murdered by the mob, performed by the New Deal-formed group theatre. Using Soviet montage techniques, the film sought to awaken the working class to the need for a united front in America. It also served as a reminder of the lessons of the Great Depression, aiming to assert the legal rights of workers, their needs, and their unions.
That was the thunder of our voices, demanding that light be turned on these hidden crimes. In the 76th Congress, a resolution was passed authorizing an investigation of the violations of civil liberties and the rights of labor. Bad news. Bad news for the big shots, for the spy agencies. Rumors of Senate subpoenas. Bad news for the tear gas salesman. Not in today. Out of town. Correspondence, never keep it. Business, strictly cash. Don't answer unless you have to. Strike breaking, never do it. Stool pigeons, never use them.
15,000 people saw Native Land as a work in progress, a testament to the collective nature of its production. Their contributions kept the film funded between 1938 and 1942, cent by cent. By the time it was completed, America had entered the war, and the question of workers' rights was relegated to the background. After that, the film nearly vanished. The war delayed some progressive movements, but it also introduced new urgent issues, the most important of which was the threat of fascism.
Well, I'm going to tell you, fascists, you may be surprised. People in this world are getting organized. You're bound to lose, you fascists bound to lose. All you fascists bound to lose. I said, all you fascists bound to lose.
The retrospective on Hollywood Left and the Blacklist, featuring more than 40 titles, will take place at the Locarno Film Festival in August 2026.
Red and Black, Hollywood Left and the Blacklist was written and produced by Ehsan Khoshbacht. Presented by Eve P. Thompson. Sound design by Rob Sharika.